What is up, Storm fam? Stormer Show is back. I'm feeling sore as heck. Just got back from the gym. I need to take a few days to physically recover. And yes, that means, unfortunately, I will not have any fitness and health streams in that time. Whew. I guess I could have like a meditation and breathing practice stream. Just to tell you all the truth, I simply do not have a firm enough grasp or understanding of meditation-based practices. I am trying to continuously learn everything that I can about what's called mindfulness practice, where it's like we're breathing and breathing out. Kind of similar to the mindfulness special series that I had. But I would say that I haven't practiced the coaching thought guide and routine enough to have a stream based around that. But perhaps at some point we could have something like that on the Stormer Show. But yeah, it's gonna be a matter of me continuing to research stuff like yoga techniques, different types of narratives, stuff like that, where I'm just like guiding the group and using my words to help people process emotions. I don't know why I found that so hard to say, but yeah, stuff like that. My exercises have been easier for me to showcase on stream in the past because I've been doing them for so long. Stuff like my jumping jack routine and my different assortment of exercises, different stretches like neck stretches, different muscle group stretches. All those stretches that I've done on stream, I have seen and performed, executed in the past. And yeah, a lot of those techniques are just from exercise routines that I've practiced in the past. I haven't really been as exposed to yoga practice and the Buddhist school of thought and beliefs. So it's very much the case where it's like the more I expose myself to those ideas, the better, or the more in a position I'll be to subsequently teach those ideas. But yeah, it's very much a part of exploration on my part. It's like trying to learn more about those schools of thought so that way I can guide people through them. Okay, but for you all today, I've got another chapter of War and Peace, of course, and Sapiens. And yeah, I guess these concepts in these books are pretty sometimes can be somewhat complex in nature. I'll try to keep doing what I can to break down some of these ideas as much as I can, use them as discussion points, and so on and so forth. But as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for enjoying the stream. And I hope, if nothing else, that it is informative to you. Okay. Without further ado, let me open my book. And yeah, on Stormer Show, I'm continuing to look at different types of books that we can read for the show. React streams or something that I can try. But yeah, some of that content, I think it's entertaining for sure. Like, definitely. But the question is, am I going to be able to provide quality enough response to warrant its appearance on the show? And yeah, I'll have to wait and see on that. Okay. In War and Peace, we're on chapter 19. And yeah, as I alluded to, some of these characters are hard for me to keep track of. Pierre is pretty easy for me to follow. But the rest of them, it's like, yeah, I'll try to piece apart who they are from the text that Leo wrote. Okay. And here we are, chapter 19. XIX, in Roman numerals. At the men's end of the table, the talk grew more and more animated. The colonel told them at the declaration of war. I skipped some part here. The colonel told them that the declaration of war had already appeared in Petersburg, and that a copy, which he had himself seen, had that day been forwarded by courier to the commander-in-chief. I believe this, if I'm not mistaken, is the declaration of war that Napoleon made against Russia in the Napoleonic War era. And yeah. And why the deuce are we going to fight Bonaparte? Remarked Shinshin. He has stopped Austria's cackle, and I fear it will be our turn next. Come to find out that the Rothschild family profited a heck of a lot off of the Napoleonic Wars, and for the cause, for the amount of financial involvement, for the amount of money that they gave to Britain in the form of loans during the war to finance the war effort, that helped sway the outcome of the war in the favor of Great Britain. And yeah, I didn't even know that, but it goes to show, like, it's all there in history. The colonel was a stout, tall, plethoric German, evidently devoted to the service and patriotically Russian. He resented Shinshin's remark. Plethoric here is referring to an amount. Yeah, when you say like plethora, it means like a wide amount of something. But here it's being used to describe the colonel. Maybe it's being used to refer to his level of abilities. I would think that's the case. The word that Leo uses here is plethoric German, so yes, it does seem like that's the case. He is devoted to the service and patriotically Russian. He resented Shinshin's remark. It is for the reason, my good sir, said he, speaking with a German accent. What is the German accent? This is the way. I believe is that French or German? Gut, yeah. Like that's German right there. It is, I'll try my best. It is for the reason, my good sir, said he. Yeah, it's like the nihilist in The Big Lebowski. It is for It is for the reason, my good sir, said he, speaking with a German accent, for the reason that the Emperor knows that. He declares in the manifesto that he cannot face with the indifference, the danger threatening Russia, and that the safety and dignity of the Empire, as well as the sanctity of its alliances. He spoke this last word with particular emphasis, as if in it lay a gist of the matter. Yeah, it's hard to understand almost like what he's saying through all these German accent isms. As we know later on, it's like Napoleon has to retreat. I think he gets as far as Moscow, which is pretty dang impressive. I think it speaks volumes to Napoleon's level of military ability. Then, with the unerring official memory that characterized him, he repeated from the opening words of the manifesto. And the wish which constitutes the emperor's soul and absolute aim, to establish peace in Europe on firm foundations, has now decided him to dispatch part of the army abroad and to create a new condition for the attainment of that purpose. That, my dear sir, is why, he concluded, drinking a tumbler of wine with dignity and looking to the Count for approval. Connaissez-vous le proverbe? Jerome, do not roam, but turn spindles at home, said Shinshin, puckering his brows and smiling. Cela nous convient à merveille. Surov now, he knew what he was about. Yet they beat him a plate couture. And where are we to find Souveur now? Je vous demande un peu. Like, you guys can tell I don't speak French. Said he, continually changing from French to Russian. Do you know the proverb? Yeah, I do better with the English. Do you know the proverb? 2. That suits us down to the ground. 3 hollow. 4. I just asked you that. We must fight to the last drop of our blood, said the colonel, thumping the table. We must fight to the last man. Like, okay, Colonel, don't hurt yourself. Don't worry, we'll win it for the motherland. We must tie for our emperor, and then all will be well. And we must discuss it as little as possible. He dwelt particularly on the word possible. As possible, he ended again, turning to the Count. That is how the old hussars look at it, and there's an end of it. And how do you know? How do you, a young man, and a young hussar, how do you judge of it? He added, addressing Nicholas. Hussars, I believe, from what I remember, are the rank below Count. It's like a Viscount, as I recall. It's a light horseman. A soldier. Historically, it's a soldier in a light cavalry regiment that had adopted a dress uniform modeled on that of the Hungarian Hussars. From Italian Corsaro. Okay, there you have it. He was addressing Nicholas at the time when he heard that the war was being discussed, had turned from his partner with eyes and ears intent on the colonel. I am quite of your opinion, replied Nicholas, flaming up, turning his plate round and moving his wine glasses about with as much decision and desperation as though he were at that moment facing some great danger. It's like spilling everywhere. It's like although if he were in great danger, wouldn't he be like down it and then get ready for action. I don't know. As if facing some great danger. I'm convinced that we Russians must die or conquer, he concluded, conscious, as were others after the words were uttered, that his remarks were too enthusiastic and emphatic for the occasion and were therefore awkward. Russia, from a historical lens, I don't think they've lost many military battles. They did lose the Battle of Three Emperors, I believe, but yeah, on the actual Russian homeland, like they haven't really lost that much. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think Kublai Khan is maybe the one person in history who really stands out in my memory of having had any military success in Russia. But yeah, they're hard to conquer for sure. I am convinced that we Russians must die or conquer. What you said just now was splendid, said his partner, Julie. Sonia trembled all over and blushed. She blushed to her ears and behind them and down to her neck and shoulders while Nicholas was speaking. Ooh, she might have the hots for Nicholas. Pierre listened to the colonel's speech and nodded approvingly. That's fine, said he. The young man's a real hussar, shouted the colonel, again thumping the table. What are you making such a noise about over there? Marya Dmitrievna's deep voice suddenly inquired from the other end of the table. What are you thumping the table for? She demanded of the hussar. And why are you exciting yourself? Do you think the French are here? I guess that is true. France was opposed to Russia at the time. I am speaking the truth, replied the hussar with a smile. It's all about the war, the count shouted down the table. You know my son's going, Marya Dmitrievna? My son is going. I have 4 sons in the army, but I still don't fret. It is all in God's hands. He'll take care of him, don't you worry. You may die in your bed, or God may spare you in battle, replied Marya Dmitrievna's deep voice, which easily carried the whole length of the table. He's like, it don't matter. At least if you're on the battlefield, you can die a hero. That's true. Once more, the conversations concentrated, the ladies at one end and the men at the other. You won't ask, Natasha's little brother was saying. I know you won't ask. I will, replied Natasha. Her face suddenly flushed with reckless and joyous resolution. She half rose by a glance inviting Pierre, who sat opposite, to listen to what was coming, and turned to her mother. Mama, rang out a clear contralto notes of her childish voice, audible the whole length of the table. What is it? Asked the Countess, startled, but seeing by her daughter's face that it was only mischief. She shook her finger at her sternly with a threatening and forbidding movement of her head. The conversation was hushed. Mama? It's like that TikToker. Mama! What sweets are we going to have? And Natasha's voice sounded still more firm and resolute. The Countess tried to frown, but could not. Marya Dmitrievna shook her fat finger. Cossack, she said threateningly. Most of the guests, uncertain how to regard this sally, looked at the elders. You'd better take care, said the Countess. Mama, what sweets are we going to have? Natasha again cried boldly, with saucy gaiety, confident that her prank would be taken in good part. Sonia and fat little Petya doubled up with laughter. You see, I've asked, whispered Natasha to her little brother and to Pierre, glancing at him again. Ice pudding. But you won't get any, said Mary Dmitrievna. Natasha saw there was nothing to be afraid of, and so she braved even Maria Dmitrievna. It's like, you know what? Forget it. I'm getting my dessert. It don't matter. Maria Dmitrievna, what kind of ice pudding? I don't like ice cream. What? Carrot ices. No. What kind, Maria Dmitrievna? What kind? She almost screamed. I want to know. Maria Dmitrievna and the Countess burst out laughing, and all the guests joined in. Everyone laughed, not at Maria Dmitrievna's answer, but at the incredible boldness and smartness of this little girl who had dared treat Maria Dmitrievna in this fashion. It is her daughter, so it's like mother-daughter bond. Sometimes daughters have more flexibility with their own mothers than anyone else has. Because it's in the family. Natasha only desisted when she had been told that there'd be pineapple ice. Before the ices, champagne was served round. The band again struck up, the Count and Countess kissed, and the guests, leaving their seats, went up to congratulate the Countess, and reached across the table to clink glasses with the Count, with the children, and with one another. Again the footmen rushed about, chairs scraped, and in the same order in which they had entered, but with redder faces, the guests returned to the drawing room and to the Count's study. And chapter 20 is the next chapter. It is quite long, chapter 20. Yeah, it's a doozy, chapter 20. Alright, we can save it for next time. My muscles are quite sore. Alright, let's dip into Sapiens. See what Yuval's talking about today. Imagine Communities was last time. Real pick-me-up chapter. About how everything is going to the state. Okie dokie. Perpetuum mobile. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Perpetuum. Yeah, I actually said it correctly. Wow. Perpetuum mobile. Let's see. What does it mean? It's another way of saying perpetual motion, and in music it's a piece of fast-moving instrumental music consistently mainly of notes of equal length. Like a, I don't think hardly anything moves perpetually. Certain devices have been said to exist. Perpetual motion machines. Yeah, hypothetically speaking, they're hypothetical in nature. They can only exist in isolated systems because they don't exist in any true sense. There are no real perpetual motion machines. I thought that was the case. Yeah, that was the case. That there are no perpetual motion machines. Okay. But, yeah. The revolutions of the last 2 centuries have been so swift and radical that they have changed the most fundamental characteristic of the social order. Yeah, I would say so. The last 2 centuries would have been 1821 till now. Yeah, in that time, the Russian Revolution has occurred, in which case the Tsars were overthrown. The House Romanov was overthrown. What other revolutions have happened? Yeah, Russia sticks out in my mind. I'm sure there are other examples. I just can't think of them right now. Traditionally, the social order was hard and rigid. Order implied stability and continuity. Swift social revolutions were exceptional, and most social transformations resulted from the accumulation of numerous small steps. Yeah, two different ways that revolutions occur: fast and not so fast. Me paraphrasing Yuval here. Humans tended to assume that the social structure was inflexible and eternal. Families and communities might struggle to change their place within the order, but the idea that you could change the fundamental structure of the order was alien. People tended to reconcile themselves to the status quo, declaring that this is how it always was and this is how it always will be. Pretty much, people have almost always had a belief that if it's not broken, why fix it? And that's probably been the single biggest obstacle of change. People only really bring about changes when they notice and observe a significant problem. Like, okay, this was a problem and it had to be fixed. Like, once people hit that wall, it's like that's when change comes about. Until people recognize the problem, they're kind of like, yeah, this is fine. It's all fine. Over the last 2 centuries, the pace of the change became so quick that the social order required a dynamic and malleable latent nature. It now exists in a state of permanent flux. When we speak of modern revolutions, we tend to think of 1789, the French Revolution, of course, 1848, the Liberal Revolutions, or 1917, the Russian Revolution, as I've already pointed out. But the fact is that these days, every year is revolutionary. Really, Yuval? Really? You really think so? Today, even a 30-year-old can honestly tell disbelieving strangers that when I was young, when I was your age, the world was totally different. Yeah, I mean, I guess in that sense. Like if you're talking to grandma or grandpa. The internet, for example, came into wide usage only in the early 1990s. Hardly 20 years ago. Today we cannot imagine the world without it. Actually true. It's in use all the time nowadays. Hence, any attempt to define the characteristic of modern society is akin to defining the color of a chameleon. The only characteristic of which we can be certain is the incessant change. People have become used to this. And most of us think about the social order as something flexible, which we can engineer and improve at will. The main promise of pre-modern rulers was to safeguard the traditional order or even go back to some lost golden age. In the last 2 centuries, the currency of politics is that it promises to destroy the old world and build a better one in its place. Not even the most conservative of political parties vows merely to keep things as they are. Everybody promises social reform, education reform, economic reform, and they often fulfill those promises. Exactly. What's something Obama promised? Hope and change. What's something Trump promised? Make America great again. It's like Who doesn't want it to be better than it is? Everyone wants it to be better than it is. So what are you going to promise everybody? It's going to be better than what it is. It's going to be great. Great. Just as geologists expect that tectonic movements will result in earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, so might we also expect that drastic social movements will result in bloody outbursts of violence. The political history of the 19th and 20th centuries is often told as a series of deadly wars, holocausts, and revolutions. Like a child in new boots leaping from puddle to puddle, this view sees history as leapfrogging from one bloodbath to the next, from World War I to World War II to the Cold War, from the Armenian genocide to the Jewish genocide to the Rwandan genocide, from Robespierre to Lenin to Hitler. There is truth here, but it's all too familiar. The list of calamities is somewhat misleading. I can only imagine where Real is headed. We focus too much on the puddles and forget about the dry lands separating them. The late modern era has seen unprecedented levels not only of violence and horror, but also of peace and tranquility. Charles Dickens wrote of the French Revolution that it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. This may be true not only of the French Revolution, but the entire era it heralded. It is especially true of the 7 decades that have elapsed since the end of World War II. During this period, humankind has for the first time faced the possibility of complete self-annihilation and has experienced a fair number of actual wars and genocides. Exactly. It's like the Cold War concept. It's like nuclear apocalypse could have wiped out the human race for at least the last 30 years. And still it has not. During this period, humankind has faced the possibility of self-annihilation, yet these decades were also the most peaceful era in human history. Precisely. And by a wide margin. This is surprising because these very same decades experienced more economic, social, and political change than any previous era. The tectonic plates of history are moving at a frantic pace. But the volcanoes are mostly silent. The new elastic order seems to be able to contain and even initiate radical structural changes without collapsing into violent conflict. It's like, if I had to deconstruct somewhat what Yuval's talking about, it's like the concept of detente. It's like the threat of violence sometimes is enough to prevent violence. It's a pretty fascinating concept. Like, yeah, it's something, alright. Do I have any more commentary about this chapter? I mean, we are reading War and Peace, after all. Definitely a lot to think about. And each one of these concepts can be examined. Like Robespierre advocated for a higher society, as did Lenin, as did Hitler. They all had their own views about what a perfect world was, what ideals were represented by them. It's like they all saw in a better version of the world, society, and each one had different views on how to get there. Each one went to different lengths to achieve their aims. Each one had different theories and ideals. Alright, I hope you've all enjoyed War and Peace and Sapiens. Food for thought, things to think about. I hope you've all enjoyed. Thank you for the follows, chat, shares, what have you. Stormer Show signing off. My muscles. Ow. Owie, 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 my muscles are here.